Do you want increased faith? The apostles asked for it today in the gospel. And to have like full disclosure here, this is entrapment, okay? So the right answer is not yes. But do you want increased faith? Let's just say that you say yes. What would it give you if you had greater faith? Like, what do you imagine it would be like to have greater, stronger, increased faith compared to where you are now? What do you imagine it would be like that makes you want it? Like, would things be easier? Or would there be less fear? Or less suffering? Or you'd be happier? Like, what would it be like if your faith was increased? Jesus gives a just fascinating answer today to that request. The apostles go to the Lord and they say, increase our faith. And I think, actually, they're probably being a little bit melodramatic. I think they're overthinking things. And what they think is that they're making this noble, humble kind of request, like, oh, we are so small and the task is so great. And Lord, like for this great thing, please increase our faith. And Jesus, when he says, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you'd say to a mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it would obey you. The point is, you already have what you need. If you have this much faith, then you have enough, and you have more than that. You don't need very much faith. You don't have to wait until you have more faith like you imagine you should. So let's stop talking about it and get down to work. This is the way Jesus responds. He like adjusts their sense of like what's necessary or where they should be before doing what the Lord asks them to do. And Jesus does this kind of recalibration all the time. You know, with the Beatitudes, he turns everything upside down. He says, it's hard for those who are rich to enter the kingdom of heaven. And then he says, blessed are the poor. You say, that doesn't seem to make sense. He does this in all kinds of ways, but today he does it with this parable about the servant and the master. Basically, like he says, the servant did what he agreed to do, what he was paid to do. So should he get special treatment? And he says, no. No, instead, he would say, I'm an unprofitable servant. I've done what I was obliged to do. So this is how it is also for us, just living the life of faith. Like when we're faithful, when we live a life of discipleship, when we do what the Lord commands us to do, we haven't done God any favors. And there's no reason to look for like a pat on the back. We've just done what we were obliged to do. So this kind of recalibration. This is what we want to focus in. Because the truth is that what is normal, what is true, what is living in reality, what it means to be an ordinary human being, that means holiness, works of mercy, rejecting temptation, and belonging entirely to the Lord. And what's a lie, what's living in falsehood and an illusion, is sin and a life apart from God. So I just want maybe just pause for a moment and recognize our conditioning. Okay, we're conditioned by what we're used to. You might even say stronger than conditioned, we can be brainwashed, because the usual standards that we have, they're set by our time, our examples, rather than the gospel. So like, here's two examples of conditioning. Like if you go to high altitude and you're used to being way down here, then it messes with you. And if you're used to high altitude and you come down here, then I've known people who live in Denver or like who live above Denver, and when they come to the places like West Michigan, it's like, wow, the air is thick, you know? There's a lot of it. One time I went to Denver with my brothers, and we foolishly rented like a little RV that was in a dubious state of disrepair, and we're just like hoping the brakes work as we drive around these mountains. And I found out actually during that trip that it is very difficult to cook pancakes while driving 60 miles an hour through the mountains. But during that trip, it was like, I have to remember to breathe, you know, because I'm conditioned for this kind of sea level air. Another one would be pain, actually, how pain conditions us. Where if you're used to, it happens so quickly. If you have like the flu for like a day, or you have a toothache or something, as soon as it gets a little better, it makes a big difference. Like we get conditioned for the pain, and then when the pain is a little bit less, it feels so good. Even though we don't actually feel good, we just don't, we feel less bad, like we're going back to ordinary. This is, I think the pain example especially, is sort of like where we are in the world right now, where like the examples or the average or what looks like normal is like so bad that when someone gets a little closer to like the minimum, we're just amazed, wow, incredible. And this is the recalibration that Jesus is talking about. Like, I think if we're going to listen to what he says in the gospel today, then for you college students who go to Mass, who don't get drunk every weekend, who aren't living some sort of promiscuous life, we should not ooh and awe over you, because like great, you didn't do like such terrible things. You just did the basics. Many people will, but that's just because we're used to like, oh yes, I'll do whatever, like, yeah, I'm Catholic or I'm Christian, and on the weekends all bets are off. This kind of, here's another example of like the recalibration of expectations. It would be weird if parents, and if I'm getting this wrong, you have to correct me, but if parents turned to their little children and were like, thank you so much for going above and beyond today and not punching your sister. Like, no, we just expect this, you might praise your children because they were really angry and they controlled themselves. Okay, that's great, but like, they didn't do something exceptional. Or it would be weird too if children were like, Mom and Dad, thank you so much for not throwing me out of the house today. Like, what do you think this is, Like, we can be grateful for example, parents like time, energy, and life, and feeding us, and clothing us, and all of that stuff. But it's kind of insulting, actually, if you say something that sounds like, and you didn't have to. Because the whole point is that parents say, well, I do have to. I don't have a choice. You'll die without me, but I still do it freely, and I want you to expect it from me. I think there's wisdom in like you've seen this guy in movies before, like the kind of grumpy priest, the unappreciative pastor that seems to take people for granted and will never say thank you for people doing things, whatever, around church, volunteering or cleaning things up or taking responsibility. He doesn't thank them, and people might feel a little bit underappreciated. But the whole point is that his expectations say something about like people's place in all of this. It's sort of like, if I were to thank you, now I probably say thank you too much, and maybe reading this gospel I need to adjust this, but the pastor's like, if I were to thank you, that would mean that you're an outsider and that you did something extra. But you're not an outsider. You belong here, and this is your home. And so you took responsibility, you stepped up. You didn't actually do something extra. It's still appreciated and good, but like, by not saying thank you so much for going the extra mile, what he says is, you belong here, and this is your place, So of course, we would contribute in these ways. In my experience, it happens often actually that people get pretty offended when you expect from them what they committed to in baptism. This comes up in marriage prep when you ask parents like, so like, you're going to Mass, right? And they're like, why would you assume that? Oh, I don't know. We're here for baptism prep. Or you have a couple for marriage prep and you say, so like, you're not living together, right? I see you put down the same address. And they're like, why would you expect that, assume that? Like, well, you're here for marriage prep. Like, I thought you said you love Jesus, Now this can be a little bit, I might be a little bit more bombastic here and less pastoral here. I'm usually pretty gentle in there, but I'm trying to make a point here, When you go to somebody's house, there's an expectation that you'll be looking like that there will be a bathroom to be found. That's just an expectation. So it's fine to say, hey, where's the bathroom? But it can be rude, actually, if you walk in somebody's house who you know from church or something, and you say, "Where's the crucifix?" Like you have all this like hotel art on your walls, or Hobby Lobby, live, laugh, love, or in the bathroom, take a seat. But like, where's the Lord? Like, what? Then they feel a little bit judged and stuff, But you're like, what's normal, What should be expected? This kind of recalibration of normal and expectations, this is what Jesus is doing today. And it brings up this question that I don't have an answer to yet, but it's like, if praising or thanking or giving awards to people doing what is actually just ordinary, if it reinforces false and harmful expectations, like Jesus talks about today, then how, like, what do we say? How do we affirm goodness? Last night, I came across this very quickly because the extraordinary minister for Holy Communion, there was nobody scheduled. There was somebody here. He wasn't planning on doing it, but he said, "You need somebody? Step up and do it." So after Mass, he came up to me, and I said, "I will not thank you." And he said, "I have only done what I was obliged to do." So like, how do you, I wanted to just say, "Hey, thanks," because like you weren't planning on it and you went out of your way. But on the other hand, we needed you and you were the only one to do it. So like, shouldn't we just expect you to do this? So I'm not really sure actually how to work that in words yet. But there's something like so good actually about expectations. Normally when we talk about expectations and the calibration of them and like having expectations for other people, we think of all the bad examples where we've been taken for granted, or where people's expectations were too high or unrealistic, like a bad boss or kind of maybe sometimes a harsh parent, or where there's a threat involved in the expectation, like I expect you to do this, and if you don't, then whatever, something bad, if you can't measure up to this unrealistic standard. But on the other hand, have you ever been offended by someone's gratitude? This is a little bit like what I was talking about with parents and children. Like, if your kid calls you because they have a flat tire and you go and help them, if they treated you like a random person who happened to stop, like, "Wow, I'm so grateful, and how do I repay you?" Like, you're like, "I'm your dad. You don't have to repay me. Like, thanks for being grateful, but like, I want you to expect this of me." Or when people will say things like, "That was actually pretty good." That actually like reveals something about what they think of you, what they were expecting from you. So like, "Well, thanks for saying it was good, but what you told me was that you expected very little." Or when people praise you for going above and beyond, but it's like, you want to be expected to do these things or to be a certain way. To be offended by someone's compliment or gratitude is like where I'm using this to point out that expectations, like we also like long for them. We thirst for them. It means that someone else depends on us or thinks we're dependable. Like this is the kind of relationship that we commit to, So sometimes maybe we want God to fawn over us. Like, "Well, I didn't want to go to Mass on Sunday. I woke up and it was hard and I showered and I got in the car and I got here." And like, that's great because it took effort and it was difficult, okay? We can recognize that. But sometimes we can get to the point where we feel a little bit entitled, like, "Wow, you just incredible." Like, wait, no. If God fawns over us, if he praises or like is so grateful that we did what we were commanded to do, then that would mean he thinks very little of us. He expects very little of us. Instead, God honors us by expecting holiness in us. So you can imagine this kind of conversation. Like, what's another? I left gaps where I needed examples, and so I'm coming up with these on the spot. This is a not quite finished homily, but here's an example that will work. Say like, whatever, you resolve to pray for 10 minutes each day, and guess what? It's the end of the day, and you'd rather just relax and then go to bed, and prayer sounds like a lot, but you resolve to do 10 minutes of prayer. So, okay, you open the scriptures, you read a little bit from your Bible, you pray, and then you wrap it up, 10 minutes, done, now you can relax and go to bed. One of the angels comes to God the Father in heaven and says, guess what? Like, he did it. He did what he said he was going to do. Can you believe that? And it was hard, and he was tired and all this stuff. Then, like, this is the way God honors us. He says, well, of course he did. He said he would, and he's a man of his word. And he loves me. Like, I'm not surprised. The only person who would be surprised that he followed through has no idea who he is. Like, how could you think he would do something else? Do you see how God's expectations for us, they're not oppressive, they're not pushy, they're not unrealistic, but they're like this great honor and a form of love that God has for us, that he actually expects holiness from us. It's easy to get fearful about commands and obligations and what we have to do and feel kind of overwhelmed. But actually, like all of that is just a trick in your mind. Because God has not asked you to command a tree to uproot itself and go into the sea. He commanded you to do good and to avoid evil, and to go to Mass every Sunday and Holy Day of Obligation, and to pray every day, and to read Scripture, and to go to confession, and to forgive, and do works of mercy, and contribute to the church, and teach your children. Like, these are doable things. The lie is that God asks too much. You do not yet have enough faith. And the truth is that what God commands is not beyond you, and you already have what you need.